Hello, Jenny. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's just twiddle that over there a little bit. Ooh, okay. So hopefully you can hear me. Great. Give us a thumbs up and say hello when you're there. I have no idea really what we're going to be talking about today. I know I might always say that, but genuinely, I have no idea. I have a few little notes. I've got a couple of questions. I've got one from Clive, who popped it onto Facebook, and that's about Spirit of Place. So we'll be looking at that, and we'll probably... oh, yes, okay, well, there you go, straight away. There's a question there straight away from Grass Grower. Okay, yeah, we'll go with that. I've got a reference here from a conversation I was having with Patty a couple of weeks ago about materials used for dowsing. I'll come to the spirit guide shortly. Hello, Kelly. Good to see you. And Lottie might turn up, and she might want some more guidance on working with her guides. So we might well have a guide-centered conversation today. And hopefully Merlin will turn up and have something to say for himself. I think I have labeled this as guardians, haven't I? Spirit guardians. Just felt we should put something else interesting on there. JF. Oh, JF. Thank you. JF will be moderating today if he's can do so kind. Martin, hello. Good to see you. Drinking better water. It's not one of my areas of specialization, Kelly. Hello, Brad. Good to see you. Thanks, JF. I'm sure other people in the chat, Kelly, may have more info about water invigorating devices. I know that some people that I've been in touch with over the years obviously are very much into that. Here we live quite remotely, and we actually use well, it's described as spring water, but it actually comes out of a mine in the hillside. So it hasn't got any of the fluoride and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite an interesting mix, but you have to kind of, we got a processing plant and all that sort of thing, but it's not quite the same. Nick, hey, there you go. Good to see you. You've probably watched it, actually, you guys, because you're a fairly regular amongst the overall subscriber base. But do check out the interview I did with Bill Bennett, Australian award-winning film director. There's a man who is on a life path of change, if ever there was one. Great to speak to him. Lovely guy. Really discovering his heart, which is what's so lovely about it. So let's talk about guides. Let's talk about guides. Who was it who asked about? It was simply about, can you tell us some more about your spirit guide, Merlin? Okay, Grass Grower, great name. Merlin, gosh, eh? There is a video. There are several videos in which you can see my countenance, my delivery change, and what happens when Merlin comes through is, obviously I let him take over. I haven't got much choice really these days. Never did have, and he's very, very direct. And when I'm working with clients one-to-one, if he wants to speak, it's like almost sometimes embarrassingly direct, which is great because it's that kind of soul energy. And sometimes there's this communication from, as we know, from spirit that is very much about guidance around things that we actually, as individual human beings in this incarnation, don't actually have an awareness. And so having a soul connection, if you like, to that energy, as many sensitives do, this is not special. And for goodness sake, don't take any of my reference and discussion or talk about, hi Maps, good to see you, about the spirit guide as being anything special, because the crucial thing about all of this is that if I can make contact with a a loving spiritual personality. Now, admittedly, he comes with quite a lot of gravitas, and there's a certain amount of, what should I say? Well, gravitas is seriousness and a weight of delivery, which can be quite unsettling sometimes for me, or used to be a bit unsettling for me. But if I can do that, then everybody can. And this is what has really brought it home to me about how we are so not our, the human being, the blobby bit, and that, that we're not just this. And we've talked a lot in the past about all sorts of different representations and labels for the enormity of the depths of ability that we all have in the non-physical aspect. But if I can make contact with a loving being like that is fundamentally a guardian aspect, because Merlin, to me, represents, this energy, this Merlin energy represents a personality formed and connected deeply with the natural world. So some of you will have heard this all before, but I'm going to repeat it again because it's worth repeating, and it's my interpretation of what's going on, and obviously I'm answering the question. But when Merlin first spoke through me, the words that he said, as I felt this enormous electrical kind of presence coming through and into my body, because I'd been training for a long time to actually allow him into my space so that he would talk through me. He said the very first words were, "I am Merlin, I am of the earth." And then he was addressing the people in the room, and he said, "I have been working with this child." That was me, child. So much for an old soul, child. And there is much to do. And the image of him when he, right from the start, right from day one, from that moment, and that moment, by the way, is on video. There is a video. I'm not sure whether JF would be able to find it. I think we found it in the past. There's a video. It was recorded on a webcam thing, I think. I was hooked up to some machinery. And so, yeah, those words are there and revealed. So the image that came through when he came through at that time was all about the natural world. And I still feel to this day that, there is that connection. Sorry about the squeaky chair. Let me just carry on for a second. I'll come back around to that question in a sec, JF, and I'll just check out any other questions that were there in the chat, because the really interesting thing from my point of view, and a little bit actually, I am a little bit disappointed by this. I worked with him from probably around about 2010. So I started probably around about a bit before, because anyway, it doesn't matter why I remember that, but it was a bit before 2010. And we worked together a lot. I did a lot of meditation, I had a lot of instruction from a very good spirit medium who was encouraging me and helping me along and helping me on that development path. And I did a lot of meditation each day in order to connect. In fact, so much meditation, that was one of the things that was distracting me from my corporate video business. And I spent less time doing the video business and more time just off with the fairies, trying to make contact with my guide. And at that time, I didn't realize that it was Merlin. And so when I connected with him, I would feel this very strong kind of electrical presence. And when I say electrical, I mean that in the sense that the way the body was reacting was like an electrical force. So it was like sticking my fingers into the mains. Not a sensible thing to do, don't try it. But it was incredibly fiery. I'll use that term. And I think that the reason that why this fiery feeling, all right, okay, yeah, links to hell, doesn't it? As a symbolic kind of word. If I say, well, this spirit came into my being and I felt like I was on fire, that's a terrifying thing to some people. So I can see my subscriber count kind of going, woo, as I say this. I've never really expressed it like this before, or in terms of saying, well, would we link that to the idea of hell? Would the church take an opportunity to link that kind of fiery feeling that a person would experience first time making contact with a spirit of good heart, of good intent, nothing, detrimental about that spirit, but that interaction with the human form giving that kind of buzz. Do you think it's possible that the church would adopt that as a way of saying, oh, don't you ever do that? No, we don't want you doing that. We don't want you linking into things like that. That'll be hellish. That will be hell. Let's build that idea of hell on that principle, because let's face it, a lot of the I'm not dissing religion per se. All I'm actually saying and alluding to is the way that these processes that the ignorant human beings of some hundreds or so years ago wouldn't have understood wouldn't have understood any of these processes. They would have been led by the church and looked up to the church as their guiding lights and their authoritative figures. The structure of the day was that the church was a powerful institution, and it was the institution along with the throne that was controlling the masses. Not the case today. We're seeing the destruction of the current controlling elite, but that's a different story. We don't need to go there. But the church would certainly have latched onto this idea of, as soon as you start to feel that feeling, then you're likely to be cast into hell. And the idea of hell being so strong, heaven and hell that concept was used to control the masses for generations and generations and generations. Now, there's nothing in spiritual teachings once one removes oneself from the religions, and I believe it's also the case that actually there is nothing in the original texts, in the early teachings, that actually says that there is such a place as hell after one passes. I certainly don't believe that is the case. I will come back around to Merlin again in a minute. But interestingly, I recorded an interview with Jeffrey Mishlove recently, and that will be coming up on the channel in a few weeks' time. And one of the things we touched on was heaven and hell. And again, Jeffrey, having interviewed goodness knows how many hundreds, if not thousands, of people, spiritual and scientific, over the years, a very interesting conversation about the existence of heaven and hell. So, coming back to basically interesting, sorry, I'm jumping around, basically interesting because he was saying there is absolutely no evidence or any kind of indication that a place like hell ever exists. So let's not get hung up on that. Right. So, prickly, by fiery, I mean it was like, if you have ever accidentally given yourself an electric shock, 13 amp domestic supply, nothing too serious, then it's like a buzzing, it's like a vibration, it's like oh my goodness, it's a strange thing. And actually that's what it felt like. It felt like but not as kind of intense as that electric shock, but it was like all over. But it came in from this side, and the reason it came in from this side was that's where he positioned himself. So as he came from non-form in closer to the physical vibration, he was adopting a shape and coming in with a shape, and therefore I could feel him literally coming across. And that was part of what I'd been practicing with him, was to come through, for months beforehand, before this event actually happened. before he actually spoke through me the first time. So I could feel this as a kind of like like you describe it, Kenny, Chris, as like a pin prickly. You can so when they come close, you can feel them like a tingling. You can feel them like a tingling. I'm saying this side, but they can come from this side. If you've got a guide that comes in this side, don't invite them. Okay, don't invite them into your body. Don't invite them into your personal space. You can work with a guide and be aware that a guide is here. Okay, but you never invite a guide into your personal space unless you're 100% sure of who it is. And you know it like there would be no doubt whatsoever about it. Okay, so I'm not saying do what I've described as an exercise. Right? I'm just saying that's what I did because I was learning and on that path, and I was being taught, as I said, very specifically about allowing and learning to trust that particular presence. So I recognized that presence. I knew who that presence was every time he arrived on this side and started to come through. You can feel a guide tingling. You can feel a guide kind of like some people feel it in different ways. I actually wanted to catch up. I do want to catch up. Hello, Deneen. Good to see you. Good to see you. Drop me an email if you need more thoughts, because I get I'm overloaded with stuff, but we might be able to get somebody else to give you some more help as well. Okay, so let's just let me just see if there's any okay. Oh no, okay, so that's fine. That's fine. Sorry guys, just catching up. Sean, good to see you. I do remember being quite as vague as this in a past live, and somebody said, "Tim, notes, write some notes, be constructive." And it's like, it's not going to happen. I don't have time to write notes. It takes, not complaining, but you know, it's lovely like this. Tell me if I've lost you again. Who asked about grass grower? Of course it was grass grower. If you want to ask me some more, if that's not giving you what you wanted to know about him. There's all sorts of stuff about the way that he introduced himself to me and my wife in our lives at the time, because he took over from. He actually came in and took over from our guardian energy, the guardian spirit energy that we were sharing the house with. There was a period where Jane said to me one evening, she came to me and she said, "I'm going to be leaving soon." And I'm like, what did I imagine that? Because suddenly this voice came in and was like, "Well, I'm going to be leaving soon." And then a few days later, Jane did leave, and a male presence arrived to take her place. And that male presence, we actually came to know as Eric, Mr. Eric, long story. And Eric was there for a couple of years. And then one day, Eric went away and Jane came back again. And it's like, oh, that's very strange. So it's great to see Jane again. When I say see, feel, douse, have conversations with Jane again. And Eric had gone. And it was probably about a year later that I started working with the spirit medium to connect to my guide. And there was a chain of events really that made it very, very clear, very obvious that the energy that had been present as that male energy in the house, in the sort of the temporary phase, was Merlin. I mean, he also said that was the case, but in the beginning, to understand that this is who he was. He had been come and gone, and come back again. So these guardians are hugely present and willing to communicate, and really I mean, really, in terms of what we are, as what I was saying earlier on, we're a part of them, they are a part of us. There is a linkage. When Merlin, when people started saying, well, I've got Merlin as my guide, they've got Merlin as their guide, I initially felt like, well, you can't have, because he's my guide. And of course, that's nonsense. But you actually start to feel in the end that because there are similarities in the way that these different guides, these distinctive guides work with people and the things that the people get interested in. There's a lot of earth energy dowsers that have got Merlin as a guide. Oh, what a surprise. I am Merlin, I am of the earth. Well, of course he is. And every single human being that's connected to that energy of Merlin, of nature, of that way of being, is likely to have Merlin as some kind of guiding force somewhere along the line. Or, but we all have a whole multitude of different guides on different levels and for different things. Part of our psyche as a human being. Absolutely is. Martin, hello. Haven't seen you for a long time. That's lovely. Clive. Yes. Excellent. Right. Okay. Good. So the interesting thing about that electrical kind of feeling was that actually, I'll come to your question in a sec, Kelly. Is that actually after that initial buzz, I didn't feel the same level of buzz again. It was the one-off, and that's interesting, isn't it, in itself? Because that's kind of like taking, I believe, like Class A drugs or something. You get a real big hit in the first one, and then the body is searching for that equal hit again, which is why you then get into the addictive process. I'm not saying there's any correlation between spirit guides coming into the space and drug taking. I'm saying that that's an interesting physiological reaction. What happened after that first buzz was that it would be a vastly reduced feeling, and that's that. What happens now is that he simply comes in and talks. So if you've been on these lives in the past when he's come in, it has literally been, I don't feel that presence come through there at all. It's literally like, oh, okay, right, yeah. And I'll stop to allow, not allow, but to enable him to speak in that way. Now, of course, somebody like Paul Selig, I mean, yeah, I get kind of like, I get a bit infatuated with some of my guests. Paul Selig, brilliant medium. And if ever there was a case for somebody illustrating that to be a good medium and to have a good connection to the spirit realms, the subtle realms, you need to be really, really grounded, then Paul Selig, I think, is an example of somebody that is illustrating that. What a great guy and an ordinary fella, but somebody that has trained and practiced for decades to really hone that connection. So, Wendy D, hello. Yes, okay, so let's look at some of these points. I'll quickly cover off Kelly's question about, are there certain crystals that can help with keeping our homes in good energy? The thing about it is, Kelly, that if you, there's a guy, isn't there? What's his name? Paul, but I can't remember. Paul, I can't remember. There's an English guy. He's got a very popular YouTube channel, Paul somebody or other. He's really into crystals, knows his crystals really well. And somebody like that would say, what each crystal might, is usually allocated to, what it usually represents, what it would do. I'm more about the fact that actually, I've got a couple of bits of nice rose quartz sitting around. I use those. I've used those in healing. I've used those in house healing work. I've used those for my own clearing stuff. I don't tend to put them around the house, but I use them on my healing environment. And I recognize that they have a certain heart connection, being rose quartz, which I think is a general thing about rose quartz. But equally, I've got your bog standard amethyst, and it doesn't matter, what amethyst looks like. And really, it's more about, for me, more about what intention you put with them and what you want to use them for, rather than what they necessarily come with, if that makes sense. Now, of course, if you want to work in the other way, if you want to work in the way of, well, I want to have amethyst crystals to do X, Y, Z. I want to have what jet, or I can't remember what the other black. There's a really good black obsidian, a really good protective crystal, obsidian black crystal, fantastic. If you want to work in the way that you go along with somebody's definition, because there are loads of books that will give you those guides, and in some practices like Feng Shui, they're very clear about certain things have certain effects in a space. I actually work more from the principle of the intention is all. That's not to say that the intention is 100% everything. There is intention in, if we talk about obsidian as a protective crystal, and it has been used as a protective crystal for centuries, then actually the focus of intention that, yes, humanity recognizes obsidian as a protective crystal will have a bearing on its protective capabilities anyway, because it kind of creates, the closest way I can describe it is it kind of creates a template for obsidian crystal that sits out there, and we tap into that as part of our awareness and being, and part of the structure of the reality that we live in. So, and again, this is kind of picked up by Amit Goswami, or rather, I've picked this up from Amit Goswami. Let's put it that way around. Let's do the man justice in the way of thinking about how can focused intent be effective. It really has to kind of hook into a certain extent onto these templates of activity. And Dr. Amit Goswami has a reference in his work to the place of memory. So memory adds to these templates. Don't want to get any more sort of involved and complicated than that, but fundamentally, in answer to your question, you can use crystals, you can use what you've got. You don't need to go out and buy specific crystals if you don't want to. If you're happy to basically have them cleared before you use them for your house clearing, in the sense that you're asking about, then you can just clear them with intent. If you want to, you can put them out under a full moon and all this sort of stuff, but you don't need to. You can just do it with intent. And then you can ask them to be actually acting as guardians, if you like, in that sense of keeping a space clear, and place it where you want to place it. Again, you can consult a Feng Shui consultant, or you can consult a specialist house healer that deals with crystals. I've worked with one of those lady that was very knowledgeable about different crystals, and she was using that in her healing modality. Unfortunately, she kind of stopped doing the whole healing side because she was, anyway, long story. But yes, you can do that. Let me just go back. Let me just pick up Clive question from Facebook. I'm not sure whether this Clive is actually the same as yes, it is. Clive, excellent. No, I haven't. It's Clive. I'm about to mention Spirit of Place. David, good to see you. Good to see you. Clive's question: if a house has a lot of bad energy due to the people that have lived there, will that influence the spirit of place, or is the spirit of place not affected? Okie dokie. Really, really good question. Let me just take a slurp of tea, if I may. It's gone quite cold already, but hang on. Yeah, there you go. Space Cadet Lottie picking up on what we were saying just now. Now, so this question, brilliant question. If a house has got lots of bad energy due to the people that have lived there, will that influence the spirit of place, or is the spirit not affected? My understanding of the, okay, so let me just classify something about the spirit of place and the guardians of a house. So if you've got a house, you've got a personality, that the actual house, the fabric of the house has a personality that you can talk to and communicate with. That is the spirit of the house, the fabric of the house. That's number one. You can talk to it, and what sort of information you're going to get back is about the condition that it feels. It might have a problem with the roof, or it might have a problem with the windows, or it might have a problem with the damp. It's a fairly slow communication. It's a fabric communication. It's a communication of physicality, rather like talking to stones, but not quite as slow as that. But anyway, the second type of guardian you've got is the spirit of place, as we would call it, which actually is the spirit of the land, the spirit of the section of the land on which the house is built. Again, you can talk to that, and quite often the spirit of the land is quite confused by what's going on above our activity, for example. Not always, but sometimes. Now, the one that's really interesting, the guardian that's really interesting, and I'm going to take it that this is what Clive is referring to, is actually the, I call this the guardian of the space. So if you think about the quantum field of existence that permeates absolutely everything, you know, we've got a bit of air here, right? This cube of air right in front of it, between you and me. The cube of air is full of the quantum field of, there's all sorts of oxygen atoms and all sorts of things in there, all sorts of atoms. So that is the space, and there's a guardian energy in of that space. And this is the really important guardian, because this is the one that actually is associated with us, our emotional energy fields. They, I'm going to say she, because that's who I used to be talking to, Jane, in the old house. She would be very aware of all of the emotional fluctuations and all the other sorts of emotional disturbances or not that were happening and had happened in that house while she was guardian of it. Basically, the guardian in that sense is responsible for the space in the same way as we should be responsible for the space on this side. What I mean by that is the physical space. We're responsible for the physical activity, the things that happen over here, the things that we do to the natural world, the things that we do to look after the house. That's our responsibility. The guardian of the space is responsible in the etheric and all the other subtle realms going through. That's the way I kind of relate to it. So, almost 100% of the guardian energies that I've interacted with in my house healing work or in interacting with the guardians at sacred sites, they have not been directly affected by the human actions in our dimension. I'll use the word dimension. Sometimes maybe dimension is not actually technically correct, but let's go with dimension. Only recently, I had one example where, whereas a house healing student, actually, it was a student, fairly advanced in the course. So her, and very switched on, actually, in terms of connecting to personalities. So I've got my dowsing didn't say that her connection was incorrect. So she came up with one instance where the guardian seemed to actually be trapped in a building. And I've never come across that. And I've never heard somebody like Adrian, my friend Adrian Lincoln Weber, who's authored several books about house healing. I've never heard him discuss it like that in that sense. So my question, had you asked this a month ago, I would have said, no, they're never affected by the actual influences and the emotions that occur within the house. But I have to say, well, sometimes maybe they can be, because it does seem that sometimes maybe they can be. We do need to be a bit aware of our perspective on what we regard as bad energy. Bad energy is a phrase that you've used there, and that's I know that you were just sending a question in, and it's not like you spent a lot of time thinking about the phrasing, but I'm just going to pick up on this because it's important about it's an important point for everything and for relating to the spirit world and actually bringing what we can learn from relating to the spirit world into our day-to-day lives, which is perspective. So if we use the term bad energy, that's us creating a judgment, a picture, an idea, a concept of what is bad. Okay, so we're all in agreement that a nuclear war that annihilated most of the planet would be a bad thing. That's not good. Okay, so we know that's perspective. When we say, well, the house actually feels really lousy and is full of bad energy, or even use words like dark energy or heavy energy, even these sort of things, we're judging it. We're putting a perspective on it. From our point of view, it is not good. It's bad. It's not great. It's not great. It's our perspective. Now we could say to a person walking down the street that they actually are that they're actually dressed badly, but that's a subjective opinion of their sense of style and taste. Same thing can be applied to a house, but now obviously in the house healing, what is considered bad, we don't use the word bad. We tend to regard it as detrimental. So therefore, it's depleting the energy of the person living in the house, and that is what makes it that's why there is a desire for something to change, something to improve, because the person is suffering. So clearly, so again, it's a perspective, because suffering is subjective. It's a feeling of unable to cope and being hurt, and it is to us a detrimental thing. But on occasion, there are perspectives that could be brought onto even suffering, which says it's a good thing. Now, what suffering can be a good thing? Well, only when the suffering is finished, and actually the suffering enables a person, for example, to be able to see from a completely different perspective, to experience their reality from a completely different experience, from a completely different viewpoint. And one of the things that we see a lot in house healing is that if you've got a very detrimental space, we register things in dowsing as simply as possible using a scale of 0 to -10, -10 being the worst. If you've got let's say a power center that is really detrimental for whatever reason, and it's registering a -10, then that can be rebalanced by the management, and they do their thing, and over time that can be rebalanced, and moving from a really detrimental score to a really positive score. So let's say a +10. Whereas if it had started at just a -1, then actually it kind of just moves in a positive scale on the balance up to a +1. So in the same sense that we could say that somebody that has experienced or experiencing going through a really shitty time in their life, if it's really bad, I'll use the word in that sense, then if they can be moved into a place of wellness, and that they can step into their power and enable their change to occur, ideally in association with upstairs, then actually their next period of their life will be an equivalent on a plus side to what they were experiencing on the detrimental, negative side. But it is all subjective, and it is all from the point of view of, it doesn't take away the fact that we will always feel empathic and sympathy for somebody that is suffering. And this is the point of spirit, is that they can see the bigger picture and see the possibilities and potentials for each of us all the time. And they can see when we're in the dark days that actually the dark days, as the famous saying is, this too will pass. Yes, it's suffering at the time, but it can pass. But it's all about balance. So that deep, dark day can be balanced by a really super good day. Again, good, bad, not great terms to use, but they define what we're talking about. Okay. Yeah. Guardian, spirit of the house, fabric of the house. Can change. It's all about what they decide upstairs, I think, really. It's all a bit of a weird one when we get into defining what exactly is where. And there is also, in all of this, one of the aspects that we have to consider is, we talk about a lot of this from, again, this is about perspective, but we talk about a lot of this from our perspective as a human being, and we're using terms and relating to things as though we would to other people. But, we, as all things, everything that we can experience, see, feel, touch, become aware of, is simply an excitation of the quantum field. Okay. So that's another way of saying everything is just vibration, which we talk about a lot. But an excitation of the quantum field. So I am simply a pattern of excitation within the quantum field, which is, continues out and connects me to this desk lamp and to this monitor and to this mug that I'm going to take a swig of other excitation of quantum field from. As an excitation of the quantum field that is trying to make sense of excitations in the quantum field, it's about interpretation. And our lives are symbolic. So bad experiences are symbolic of a disturbance within the creative force that is within the excitation of the quantum field to create symbolically the bad experience. It's exciting the quantum field in a certain way to create an experience that it reflects that part of it. It's symbolic. Our world is symbolic. The words are actually, their language is woefully inadequate when we really get down to the actual, but what am I? And it doesn't matter because it's not about language. It's not about actually, understanding one's role in this this delightful theatre of distraction that we experience for 80 years or so, if we're lucky, 80 plus years, is, it's up to us what we make of it. Again, it's interpretation, it's viewpoint. But this is why somebody like Rupert Spira, those of you that know his work, will talk very deeply and eloquently about non-duality and finding the peace within the non-duality. Non-duality simply means those aspects of existence that are beyond the Newtonian laws of physics. Really, that's the way I see it. And so somebody like Rupert Spira, who's a fantastic philosopher and well-being practitioner, and does speak incredibly eloquently, really gets to the nub of taking you into a space that is just stillness and allowing you to actually identify yourself in feeling, because it can't be put into words, that you simply are. It's just, I mean, it's spiritual platitudes, isn't it? Because actually you say, well, I know damn well what I am, and I'm sitting here, I've got some sunshine coming through the window, it's very nice, but I've got to go shortly because I've got another call coming up. You know what I mean? How are you doing, guys? Have I gone off on a tangent? Where are we going? Well, 19 of you are still there, so okay, Clive, yeah, good. The big thing to remember about guardians, about the guardian, aim to speak, if you're going to douse and speak to the guardian of a space, of a house, okay, or a sacred site, then just direct your intention to that idea that there is somebody, some person, some personality in that realm that is usually 99.9% of the time willing to speak and can be communicated with, just as you can talk to somebody else. You can talk to them. You have your rods, dowsing rods, I would recommend, rather than, it's a lot easier than having a conversation with pendulum, because the rods respond yes and no quite willingly and happily, and they confirm, your rods will confirm to you that your conversation that you're embarking upon with this personality is actually yes, no, it's a conversation. You can talk about things. I used to talk about all sorts of things with Jane. To start with, I would talk, because she said that she had been incarnate as a human being, then I would ask her about what she used to do. And she used to come down to our old house as a child with her mum, and they were in service. It was owned by quite a wealthy fella, the house. And so Jane, used to play around. Oh, I'll show you something. She used to play in the house while her mum was working there. I'm going to show you, what I'm going to show you is not going to make a lot of sense, but I'm just going to show you this because it's here. And it's a pile of, right, let's see if you can see this. It's a pile of, that's actually like a husk. That's a husk, a sweet chestnut husk, right? And some sticks that go with it, and it's all fallen apart a bit now. But the reason I'm showing you that is because on the very first occasion of being introduced to Jane, because we had some dowsers come to our house to explore what was going on in our house, how we found Jane, the guardian of the house. But in our very first conversation with Jane about who was she, and we found out that she had been alive, she had visited this house. She actually said, because the dowsers said, is there a way of finding proof? And the rods that they were using went, yes, you can find proof. And Jane pointed to a windowsill, and they went over, and it was like rods crossed over this position of the windowsill, standard windowsill, plaster all around it and things, old house. And it transpired that Jane had put there was something in that plasterwork around the window that would prove that that she was telling the truth, right? So if we found this, if we did some digging around this window, we would find something. So I said at the time, okay, well, I'll do that. And so later that day, I did do some digging, and so I was like, this is madness, because I couldn't find anything, and kept digging. And my wife was like, really, do you really want to be doing that to the house? It's like, yeah. And I started to doubt, but we came across this and this, right? Now, apparently Jane put it in the plaster when it was wet, when she was 7 years old. Why would that be? If she hadn't put it there, right? What other explanation is there for that sort of thing, organic matter, quite a big twig of it, to be in a plastered window fitting? I don't know. Can you imagine a plaster, somebody doing a bit of plaster, allowing that to go in there? I don't know. Anyway, that's what it's got. I've got that, and I found it again the other day, and I thought, oh yeah, it's lovely. I'll keep that there. So anyway, anywho, right. Dixie, hey, good man. No, always nice to see you. Let's reconnect. Yeah, good one. Yeah, George Harrison, lovely. Yeah, good. Yes, you will. You should get out there and have a chat with him. You know, it's the thing about having a dowsing conversation. I'll come to you, David, in a minute. The thing about having a dowsing conversation is that it's how much mediumship you do. Let's reconnect. But that's practice. That's what it's enlarging. That's what you're using when you're having a dowsing conversation. You don't say it's a dowsing conversation, so maybe it's not. You're probably just a medium then. So that's great, brilliant. But for those of you that are not yet in tune with your mediumistic capabilities, by using dowsing to talk to guardians and that sort of spiritual personality, you're exercising your mediumship muscle, if you like, or your channel, your conduit. And that's what I hadn't realized I was doing at the time when I spent years talking to Jane. Yeah, we'll go on for 10 minutes. There's a few more questions here. So where's David? Let me do David, and then I'll come back to maps in a sec. So is it the guardian of the space that I address when requesting the removal of an object from, say, a field like a stone? Yeah. It's fun that it's primarily the guardian aspect of space, that the guardian of space aspect that will pick up on your messages. And when you know, if you're innocently walking into a sacred site and you're not aware of the difference between spirit of place, and I mean, again, the labels are very blurred depending on who you talk to. What I've described is the labels that I use for my understanding of what we've got at these places. But if somebody walks in and they're aware that there might be a spiritual aspect to this place and they ask permission, then it's going to be the guardian of space that picks up and gives an answer, because that's their job. I think it was, mate. Yeah, I think it was. I only did one last month, Dixie, so that's probably what it was. It should be up there. I haven't been able to do edits on these this year. I haven't had time. I think it's unlikely I'm going to get time, so it will be there on the channel. Maybe JF. I don't know whether Dixie is trying to find it, but yeah. Maybe JF, you can put a link to the last one. That would be great. David, yes. So Guardian is really the key personality to have that kind of conversation with. Oh yeah, let's reconnect. I mean, yeah, if you're into that kind of thing and not kind of fully confident with your mediumistic abilities, or you want more verification, you know, the great thing about dowsing is that anybody, even if they're really highly sensitive and tuned in and used to having these conversations, if you're not confident, then dowsing is a great way of actually verifying things and getting a more tangible result. You know, that's the great thing about it. Yeah. Now, David, so your spirit guide will. Yeah. Okay. I would expect them to be in various. What I would expect is for them to be most manifested. Your personal spirit guide, I would expect them to be most manifested in the most closely related form to physicality. What I mean is most present, the closer they are to you, right? So they will wander around, sure. And can a spirit maps? You said, can a spirit follow you from one home to another? Interesting story. When my wife and I left our last house, we did say goodbye to Jane. She was back there as the guardian again. And we rather tearfully, kind of tearfully, it was a sad occasion as far as I was concerned. We went into the room that she usually hung out in and we said goodbye. And it was a very short conversation because she basically was, she basically just went, yeah, okay, bye. And then disappeared. And she I saw her in mind's eye, just like going down a corridor really fast, just quick, bye. And it was like, you know, I looked at my wife, it's like, what, you know, after all these years, is that it? But spirits are notorious for not exhibiting emotion in that sense. So I was quite cut up about it. And we moved north, and we went into a rental to start with. And some weeks after moving into that rental, I was meditating and felt a familiar presence. And it was like, Jane, is that you? And I was like, yeah. It's like, what are you doing here? I thought you know, we just left you at the last place. Bearing in mind, of course, that she went down the corridor and left the house. So yeah, so they can. Some of them can. It like all of these things, you know, we don't know for sure, do we? When we get to the other side and we have these conversations with them, then we'll be able to verify. But of course, we won't remember when we come back the next time. If we come back to this realm the next time, if they're, you know, so yeah, but they can move around. And Jane was there as a guardian because she wanted to. She'd, you know, had that conversation with other echelons of the management that's what she wanted to do. Let me give you another little bit of info that I've not discussed before, but it is relevant, which is that Jane, when you have these conversations with, I'll come back to that in a second, I'll finish that sentence in a second. When you have these conversations, when you meet these spirit entities, and once you get over the feeling of, oh, I'm just making this up, because you're not just making it up. But to start with, if you're new to it, if you haven't been born like really sensitive and used to doing this stuff, then you do think that you're just making it up and it's your imagination a lot. And that's what they spend a lot of time in trying to you know, build your trust in actually understanding that, yeah, you've got this connection and this is real. So what will happen when you have these conversations with these guardian personalities, then you'll find that there are probably links into your life in other ways, aspects of you that they will refer to, that they will comment upon, that they will reflect upon, that they will suggest have more significance than you ever paid them. Paid heed to, you know what I mean? Never more significance than you ever gave them credit for, these aspects of self. And this is one of the things that that becomes apparent, is the way that one's life ripples out into different realms and different circumstances and different things. And it's questionable. It's up to you how you interpret this stuff, because it is so not what we believe people to be. This is what I started saying right at the start of this conversation. You know, we are usually led to consider ourselves as these very solid, stable things, and that's not the case. We are a constant blur of interchanging energies all the time, and when we're talking to the spirit entities and guardian aspects, they have a bigger picture and a far greater understanding of what we are than we do from our perspective. Now, we talk a lot about the heart connection and love on this channel, and I was just bringing this back round to a facet of Jane, the guardian aspect. It's difficult for me to say this actually, because I'm aware that it could seem like poppycock, and B, it's like, yeah, maybe it's just so what. But Jane as an entity, as a personality, was so loving, because that's what they are, compassionate, understanding, right? I guess in a way, all of these sort of emotions that one as a human being would aspire to be and want to be if one was one's best version of oneself. That's a lot of ones. If I was the best version of myself, I'd want to be a compassionate, loving human being most of the time. I'm not, because I'm not the best version of myself most of the time. these guardian energy aspects, these personalities they are always the best version of themselves. And that's all there is to it. I had a conversation with Jane one day where we were talking about why she was there and what sort of conversation had she had, an arrangement with upstairs in order for her to be this guardian and changing our lives to such a degree. And she said, it's because I'm Nikki and Nikki is my wife. And you think, okay, how does that work? So I think Dixie, I'll read that, Dixie. I think that's your nan, is it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, okay. Let me read that, mate. Let me read that. Just through the door in the joint dwelling that we live in, we found her the next morning. Oh, okay. But, you know, well, David, yes, sorry, I'm jumping around. Dixie, you know, blessings to you, mate. But she's fine. You know, I know it's terrible when we love these people and they leave us, and that's part of the human condition. David, my spirit guide told me I was her daughter. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you see, and that's the sort of thing that makes us think, well, I'm making this up, right? So, Dixie, bless you, and bless your nan. Good. Okay. So I am going to have to. No, it's fine. It's fine. I am going to have to go. So give us. We got 5 minutes. Last questions from anybody. What a mixed session today. So love. George Harrison. What was that? Did he write? No, love. What was that? What's the Beatles number? All I need is love. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Let's reconnect. That's brilliant. Yeah, great. Cool. Anything we can cover in the last few minutes? Have I missed anybody out? I don't think I did, because I was gonna kind of pick up on Patty's conversation, but I think she's happy with that anyway. Okay, so we'll do this all again next month. It's nice. That's good. I'm really glad that it went that way to talk about guardians. That's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. So thanks for those questions. Good stuff. Excuse me, burping. Good. Mapsfold. That's a great name. Lovely. All right, you lovely people. I'm going to say cheerio. And don't forget, if you want to pick up any more about my view of life and reality and the world and the not world, there's the book Spirit and Earth that I co-wrote with Adrian Inkwood and Weber. Next year, well, this year, as I start this next course, I'm going to be putting that into book form as well. It won't be a repetition of Adrian's book. He's got the nuggets, he's got the section headings, what we look for, what we do with them, what we think they are. Mine will be about the more philosophical aspects of it. So that's going to be quite exciting to do that. Bless you. And then hopefully I will produce a book thereafter, more about Jane and that whole aspect, and help us all collectively find ourselves and our true multidimensionality, if there is such a word. Let's make it a word and let's use it. That's a good thing. In the meantime, let's think about choices and the power of our choices. And maybe you want to ask some questions about that for next time, perhaps. Anybody that's interested in the house healing, drop me a line, use the contact form on my website, and we can go from there. Yeah, they sound good, don't they? But I've got to write them, Sean. That's a little bit of time. If any of you, I'm not used to saying this, but I'm going to say this. I would love to spend more time on the YouTube channel. What's stopping me is I have to earn the money from elsewhere. If any of you want to donate, there's a donate button now. We've got to that stage, nearly 8,000 subscribers. So pop a pound in. It all helps. So thank you so much. I'm not begging. It's just there. You know how YouTube works. So look after yourselves. Thank you so much, all 19 of you. Do click the thumbs up, because that's another nice sign for YouTube to know that what we're doing here is worthy of their bandwidth. All right. Okay. So see you next time. Take care. Look after yourselves.